Hey everybody, Joe with Bumbling Acres. Hope y'all are doing well. And I have realized, kind of after watching a couple other homestead videos, we never really posted a back home and post recollections and life goes on kind of post about after the HOA conference. And I'm telling you, it was such a great experience. If you get the chance to go to this conference, you will not regret it. Great people from all around the United States. We met people from California. We got to meet a lot of the people's videos whom we do watch, as well as talk to people whose passion is homesteading, whose passion is healing the land, whose passion is making a difference in their local and global community through the food and such that they produce on their homestead and farm. And it was a really, really empowering experience. We came back with a lot of wind in our sails and a lot of not just driven hope, if that makes, not quite the right word, but I can't think of it. We came back with tools that will allow us to continue to develop. And the great thing about the conference is it meets you where you're at. You know, we're at a place in our conference, at our homestead, where we're developing. We've got animals. We aren't a fully operational homestead. It's really one where we're still putting in place a lot of the structures that we need. And the homestead provided us an opportunity to learn about the structures that we need, from irrigation principles to plot zoning, on our property. How do we manage it better as we prepare for these animals we want to have on our property? How do we manage our garden spaces better? You know, it met us where we're at. And the reality is the conference, I plan on going to this conference every year as we develop because, it did have time for people to talk who were established in their homestead and their farm and kind of dealing with money principles. How do you manage your money? How do you manage your customers? How do you approach getting new customers? Where that was very, very powerful. So I highly, highly recommend if you have a homestead and you can get there, that you do. It really, really is a wonderful experience, and it really, really did add so much depth to our homesteading journey. A lot of times you go into some of these conferences, and I guess I'm looking at conferences from a professional world where it feels like someone just turns the fire hose on and suddenly you're drowning in information. And most of it's not relevant to you. Most of it has very little to do with you. And you've got to filter through all of that information. The Homestead Conference was great for being able to get applicable information that applies to where you're at and ways to improve that where you're at and develop. Also, great vendors were there. The food vendors were great. But really, the Premier One people were there. Big Bear Homestead had a setup up there, was selling some soap we bought, and it was great to get to talk to him. There's just the homestead itself. The Homestead Conference itself has a great deal to offer. But the other part was that the community that you interact with, these are like-minded people. These are people who are trying to get better at what they do, to provide for their families, to provide for their local community. Is also a development of inner community. Getting to know people in our region who we can network with. Part of the big thing as we get larger is the reality that I don't want to supply 100% of everything I need on my homestead. I want to supply the majority of what I need on my homestead. But the reality is, I know that there are things that I'm not as good at in life in general. And I know there are going to be things that I'm not as good at in my homestead journey. And I know that to know that there are people close by and I can network with them. What are their strengths? How do we network our strengths together? How do we actually become a community group like what we want? There are people who do homesteading as a form of doomsday prepping, as a form of, I just want to be able to take care of myself, and that, when the world falls apart, I've got everything I need. To be honest, I don't necessarily agree with that philosophy, because the idea that you will be able to produce everything you need in any kind of large scale problem is rather difficult. It's much more likely that you will be involved in a community group under those circumstances, and you will have to leverage your skills and their skills together for the mere art of survival. So, little tangent there, forgive me. It was a great opportunity. Just so happy we went. We had actually debated up until probably about the week before, just because finances are always tight. They always are. And at one point we were talking about not going, and I'm so grateful we did. Plus, I found out Deborah is scared to death of driving through the mountains of West Virginia, and I love driving through the mountains of West Virginia. And I may take the recommended speed limit, those yellow signs that recommend your speed into a turn. I may apply them rather liberally and kind of drive my own way, which might frighten my fiance a little more, which I might get a kick out of. I don't know why, but it's fun to not frighten. It's fun to moderately concern your significant others around you. I don't know why, but it's true. So, that was our, also, I guess I'm going to share another thing that's important. I'm going to do two more, so forgive the length of this video. If you make it to the end, I'm impressed. One being, there's within the homestead community, there are people that have per se rubbed me the wrong way in their online presence. Some of that was founded, and you don't have to be friends and friendly with everybody, but it is important that you give people a chance. And we met Doug and Stacy, who are an off-grid couple. They do an incredible homestead, and we went to one of their talks, and I was a little apprehensive about Doug and Stacy. I just was a little concerned with some things, and it wasn't big deals. It wasn't like there's some moral issue with Doug and Stacy. It was more of just a personal thing, and had the chance to sit down, talk, listen to them talk, share some of their information, and really get a better feel for them as people, and definitely had to change my opinion, which is important. I did enjoy the fact that this was a homesteading conference, and while it was definitely, it felt at times there were people there who were more interested in their social media platforms than they were in their actual homestead. And that's kind of one of my critiques of the YouTube community, is that there are a lot of people who want to become famous, and I just want to operate my homestead. And this conference was a great place for me to refine my homesteading abilities and capabilities. So I was very, very, very excited to go. We had a great time out there. I went and got to see one of my Marines who I served with. It was just wonderful. So if you get the chance to go to the Homesteaders of America's conference, you should. It's every bit well worth it. We stayed in a hotel. It was relatively inexpensive. It was cheaper for us to stay in a hotel than it was for me to bring my RV. And that's generally not the state of things. Generally, it's much more expensive to stay in a hotel. So, start looking now for the conference next year. They've already announced the dates, and I don't remember what they are. Worth every penny of going to that conference. So, Joe with Bumlin Acres, hope you're doing well. I hope you've been blessed beyond measure. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And so grateful to have gone, so grateful to be here, and just blessed beyond measure. So thank y'all.